Space is kind of huge, and sci-fi is a bit of a big deal. One of the linchpins of space sci-fi is warp travel, the ability to either rip open a wormhole to anywhere you want in the universe and go through it, or to go really fast and somehow avoid running into all the things that could destroy your space boat. Don't ask me how it works, a space wizard probably did it. Daedalus: The Long Journey Home puts you in command of a 4-person crew on a ship with a brand new experimental warp drive, and then, everything goes wrong and you end up a couple thousand parsecs away from Earth. And, thus begins the proverbial journey homeward, and as I'm sure you can surmise, it's quite a lengthy trip. This space survival adventure takes place in a procedurally generated universe, and its mechanics are focused towards the sim side of things. There's a very clear direction of, but what would this be like if it were real, in all the controls and interactions with alien species, to the point where, much like in real life, I end up annoying pretty much everyone I meet within 3 minutes of saying hi. Because of the simulation angle that they've taken on everything, controls are, in a word, awkward. Not just when you're lumbering through space or trying to land on a planet, but even menu navigation is a bit off. During ship encounters, you point the left stick where you want to face, and then you pull the trigger to apply thrust. Weapons fire out of your port and starboard side, so combat is a lot like 2 naval ships going at it. In the lander, you rotate your thrusters left and right while using up or down thrust to try and land. While these controls totally make sense with regards to how simmy the game really tries to be, they're simply more frustrating than they are enjoyable. Space fights are more often than not awkward encounters with 2 ships that look like they're kind of trying to rub but not rub on each other kind of inappropriately. And lander segments are like a highly variable game of lunar lander. Occasionally, combat will actually be pretty intense and enjoyable. When the stars align and you suddenly and briefly understand what you're doing at the helm of this chunk of metal, it can be a wild experience, especially since on the recommended difficulty, death means you have to start all the way over. The problem is that happens a lot less often than it should. And then the exploration part of gameplay is, unfortunately, pretty repetitive. You go to an area, explore the planets, gather resources, talk to any aliens, and then warp to the next. The fun comes from the interactions with alien species, trying to build up relationships with them as an accidental ambassador for humanity. Like I kind of mentioned earlier though, if you're not careful, you're just gonna annoy whatever alien you're chatting with, and they'll start ignoring or even insulting you. So all the fun stuff that I wanted to do, like talking about our or other species, would just piss the alien off and I wouldn't be able to trade or do any business with them. Again, it makes sense from a sim standpoint, business before pleasure, and if you ask a bunch of dumb questions, they're gonna think you're dumb, but I honestly found that it just messed with the flow and it took away a lot of the fun that I would have had otherwise. Last little thing to talk about is that instead of health, there's an injury system, and it actually makes for a really neat substitute. If a crew member gets 5 injuries, they die. You lose access to their specialties and action options and dialogue bits, and it can actually be pretty detrimental to your adventure, especially since you only have 4 crew members. Medkits have been pretty rare for me, so an injury is a pretty big deal and it should be avoided if you can. It sucks to say, but to me, The Long Journey Home feels like an early access title that needs a bit more time in the oven. Maybe I'm missing something, I don't know, maybe this just isn't my type of game, but it just feels incomplete and lackluster. There are too many simulation-focused mechanics coming together in contradictory or just awkward ways, and it ends up more frustrating and unfun than it needed to be. There's a lot of potential here for something really incredible, but it just doesn't feel complete yet. The Long Journey Home is about $40 on Steam. Honestly, I think that's way too high of a price to ask for something this repetitive and frustrating and unfinished. I totally understand the amount of work that goes into creating a game as expansive as this, with as many minute details as this, but I think this is one that's worth waiting for a sale on, or perhaps even an expansion before you think about picking it up. So keep an eye on. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Indie Bytes. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please remember to leave a like and subscribe for more stuff like this. Be sure to check out the other content that we put out on this channel, and remember to drop me a line here on Twitter or through email with any game recommendations that you've got. You can find all that stuff down in the description below. I'll see you next time. Bye!